dancing in the street in his underwear too. It's a wonderful thing. So if he was married to Michael, then Abigail was 3. If he wasn't married to Michael, then Abigail was 2. Okay? So how about, give me another wife of David's. Bathsheba. And Bathsheba's son was? Did she have another son? There you go. You guys are so smart. All right. All right, now we're going to start asking a few more questions about these people. You wanted the light side. This is the light side. Judah. 2 possible answers. Let's start with the wives. Who can tell me the wife's name? Okay, think about this now. Judah had 3 sons by his first wife. The 3 sons were named Onan, and Shelah. Shelah, what's that all about? And married a woman and acted evilly, and God killed him. And because that's the way they did things in that day, Judah said, well, woman, you now belong to my second son. Raise up seed to my first son. And the second son did something even eviler than the first son, and God killed him. And this woman, give me a name, Tamar, went up to Judah and said, I need your third son now. And Judah said, well, he's not quite old enough. When he's old enough, you can have him. Never gave it to him. You all know the sordid story that David, why do I keep saying to Judah? David. Judah, after his first wife dies, whose name was, come on, Shua. You don't remember Shua? Oh, well, now you do. It'll be on the next test. Write it down. English, probably S-H-U-A. Shua, phonetically. She died. Judah went into mourning. Couldn't get out of the mourning. Got in this funk that went on forever. Finally found himself in a compromising position with what he assumed was a prostitute on the street. But it was Tamar dressed up to force him into admitting his responsibility. Tamar got pregnant. One of Judah's generals or close friends or somebody in his court said, this woman's been acting the prostitute. You better bring her in and do something. And so Judah, in all his huff and puff, said, bring her on in. And she came in, and she's, a little bump going on. And Judah says, what have you been doing? Who did this to you? I'm so full of righteous anger. And what did Tamar say? Well, the man who did this couldn't pay me, so he left his staff and his ring as a promise, and here they are. Whose are these? That's the man. And Judah goes, oops. Didn't have to have Nathan like Nathan went to David and said, thou art that man. That's not what happened there. So you got Judah and Shua, who had Onan, and Shelah, and then Judah and Tamar, and they had a kid. Remember who that kid's name was? You know. It was Perez. Now, here's an interesting thing that we're going to start seeing. I really had never noticed this before. Some time back, I was starting to do some research, and I went online and read somebody's blog that was so full of serious silliness and hypocrisy, I didn't pay much attention to it, until I started thinking about some of the things this guy said, and I did some of my own research, and he made a lot of good points. And we're going to see this three or four different times tonight, depending on how far we get. Judah first married Shua, which was a Canaanite. Now, I don't mean to bring 21st century race politics into our discussion here, but the fact that she was a Canaanite meant she was a descendant of Ham. Okay? Descendant of Ham. You know who Ham was, right? He was a real porky guy that came from... Son of Noah, that's my version. Right, okay. And Shua was more than likely black. How about Tamar? Yeah. I don't know exactly what color, but yeah. We're going to see this as a theme that repeats itself over the generations of those first few generations of Israel. And it's kind of interesting how this ends up. All right? Stay with me, okay? This is kind of cool. Let's talk about Jacob, since we like being confusing. Brownie points to anyone who can name all the kids that belong to any one of those of his wives or concubines. So give me a Jacob. No, okay, go ahead. Okay, so you got Jacob and Leah. You pick Leah, now you got to give me all kids. How many kids did Leah have? You're wrong, by the way, but go ahead. Okay. Somebody else answer the question. No, let's stay with Leah. Naphtali. Very good. Bilhah had Dan and Naphtali. Bilhah was Leah's maid. Right. Rachel had Joseph and Benjamin. If he gets these all right, I'm going to be so happy. Which is another interesting point, but we'll get there. Uh-huh. The rest of the kids you haven't named yet? Well, that's not true, but go ahead. Very good. Zilpah had Gad. I'm so impressed. The other one of Zilpah's kids needed, some cocoa butter once in a while for his skin. Cocoa butter for his skin. Cocoa butter for his skin. Zilpah's other child needed cocoa butter for his skin. Yes, Gad. No. Dan was Bilhah's. Gad and I'll give it to you. He just doesn't take a hint. Asher. Now, but Leah, got to get back to Leah. You only named 4 kids of Leah's. Somebody else help me with this. Got the easy ones: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Dinah, that's 5. Good job. But there's 2 more. Leah had 6 boys and 1 girl. Who are we missing? Issachar and Zebulun. Very good. Very good. Okay, very good. So let's talk about the kids. We talked about Judah. That's important. Let's talk about Joseph. Anybody tell me what Joseph's wife's name was? No, I'm sorry. You're right. Absolutely correct. Different Joseph. Pardon me? No. It's a great name. I'm wondering which one that is. She was the daughter of the high priest of On. Asenath, okay? Asenath. Now, Asenath had 2 boys. Asenath had 2 boys who were named Ephraim and Manasseh, right? Who became 2 tribes of Israel. Now, here's an interesting thing. Think about this now. Asenath was Egyptian. I want you to put away all those 1950s movies about what happened between Egypt and Israel and ask yourself what Egyptians looked like in the 3rd millennia BC, 2nd millennia BC. Quite dark. So I have no idea if they were skinny or not. Could be. Ginger, right? Yeah, okay. Took me a minute. That's Ginger, that's Charles. Say hey. So, 2 of the 12 eventual final tribes of Israel were begun with biracial forefathers. 2. Ephraim and Manasseh. But we're not done yet. I'm going to show you something in a few minutes that's quite interesting. Okay, Jochebed, or Jochebed, as it's correctly pronounced. That's Mama. If you were paying attention this morning. Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, and who knows what Daddy's name was? It's only mentioned really once in Scripture. Very good, Amram. It's pretty close. Very good. So, Aaron, Miriam. Okay, so that brings us to Moses. Come on, help me out here. I'm not, this is all good. Pardon me? Zipporah is probably the way you pronounce it. Now, who is Zipporah? By the way, you'll never... The son they had was Gershom. They had another son. I can't remember his name. That's not really important. You'll never remember that one. But Moses married Zipporah when he left Egypt, when he's kicked out of Egypt, and he ran where? To Midian, and he met a priest of Midian by the name. The first name we give him is Ruel, which means friend of God. We really don't know if that's a name or kind of a title, an explanatory of who he is. And we later know him by the name of Zipporah's father, Moses' father-in-law, Beverly Hillbillies, Jethro. Had to bring Beverly Hillbillies in. I'm so ashamed. Now, here's where things get complicated. Because we think we know what Scripture says, because we've always read it and it seems to say it, but when you look at Scripture very carefully, it doesn't definitively say it. When the Israelites were in the wilderness, maybe a couple of months after they got into the wilderness, Miriam started giving Moses a hard time over what? Him marrying an Ethiopian woman. Now, we always say that's racist. I'm not sure if it's a racist thing or not. Maybe he just didn't like her marrying that woman. But we always think, okay, Zipporah must be dead, and this must be a new woman. Yet, it's after that we start understanding that Jethro was his father-in-law. And the Scripture never shows us where Zipporah died. And it never gives us a name for this lovely Ethiopian woman. So there is a belief out there among some scholars. I say that to give it weight. Some people call themselves scholars and they ain't got a clue what a scholar is. So I don't know if this is true or not. It could be. That Zipporah is the Ethiopian woman. She was from Midian, which she definitively could have been an extension of being from Ethiopia. It could have been seen that way. So that's no big deal. But nonetheless, here you go again. Here's this theme that keeps popping up in ancient Israel, where Moses is married to. You think God has a problem with interracial marriages? Or biracial kids? Yes, please. I know. I've got a vested interest in that truth, but I look at this stuff and I go, well, that's really cool. Really upset. That's what she seems to say. And then as Dad comes back into the picture, all of a sudden we have this controversy about the Ethiopian woman. I'm not saying that's the way it is. It's just kind of interesting. We're going to skip that one if you don't mind. Oh, here we go. Can y'all remember a week? Hey, Beverly. I didn't see you sitting there back behind Danny. Or you're too tall. I'm not sure which one it is. All right. This is going to see if you have a memory that lasts 169 hours. King Josiah. You can't pronounce her name? His mama's name was Jedediah. Or it could be just Jediah or Jedida. It's hard to say. His daddy was one of the most evil kings that Judah ever had by the name of Ammon. And who can tell me who Ammon's daddy was? King of Judah for 55 years, the most evil king, Manasseh. Got saved before he died. The answer to the question, why does God let evil people rule for so long? That's who Manasseh is. Yeah, he did. You will see him in heaven, which is going to make some people very upset. Okay, here's a hard one. You ready? I'm going to give you the man's name. You tell me who his wife was and who his kids were. Now it's that guy, Daniel. Yep. Daniel. They weren't brothers. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? No, they were just friends. They were classmates, really, more than anything. Yeah. But what was his wife's name and his kid's name? Daniel. Thank you, John. No wife, no kids. He was a eunuch. Y'all were afraid to answer that, weren't you? Sorry. So as we were talking the other Wednesday night, the Moyle, never mind, no jokes. No jokes. Pardon me? I think it's a definitive fact. He started the study that led to where they found what he told them to look for so many centuries earlier. So that's kind of cool, actually. Two easy ones, then we're going to finish with a really hard one. Okay, you ready for this? All right, Elizabeth. And John, good. J the B, John the Baptist. And what was Daddy's name? Zechariah. All right. I'm not sure if this is easy or hard. Okay. Joseph. Yes, that Joseph. Okay. I want someone else beside Jesus. Jose, James, I say Jose, it's probably Joseph. They had like 6 kids. I know Joseph, James, Jude. No, I don't think so. I don't know. That's the only ones I named. You haven't given me his wife's name yet. Mary, okay. All right, you ready? Hosea. Yeah, the prophet. No. That's really a good guess. I don't think he'd appreciate that nomiker, minor prophet. Good job. What was the significance of the woman he married? Because who told him to marry that woman? Ooh. God. He said, marry her. And I'm sure Hosea was such an obedient guy, he just married her. Nothing about love, nothing about Shakespearean tribute, nothing about that. He just married her. And what did she do? She stepped out and prostituted herself. And he was angry and upset, as all men would be. And God told Hosea to do what? Go get her and bring her home and love her. Yes. Yeah, and who can name the sons? It's an open book test. I keep telling you it's an open book test. All you have to do is look up the book of Hosea. It's among the minor prophets. Jezreel was the first one, his first child. What does Jezreel mean, by the way? That's true. All three kids that they had were prophecies. Go ahead. Uh-huh. What was her name? Lo-Ruhamah. I've always wanted to name my daughter that, except I know what it means because I read the book. You can't name your daughter, I will no longer have mercy. You just can't do it. And then the third, that's what that means. And the third child's name was, kind of like this name too, Lo-Ami, which means what? To me, the book of Hosea is the most amazing book because God had come to the end of his rope and said, listen, I'm going to show you through one of the most incredible object lessons that I have had nothing but mercy for you, but you have taken me too far, and now our relationship is over. And it was over for 70 years, and it was over with some of them forever. Oh no! About Beverly Hillbillies? There was a concrete pond out in back. What's the first thing I know? First thing you know, and it's got to do with Beverly Hillbillies. Give me a moment. Give me a moment. First thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire. There you go.
What? Oh, Jed's a millionaire. Yeah.
That's.
Yeah, I told the kids they could ask anybody if they wanted to. And they're like, first of all, they know who Jed was.
There is a incredible lesson for us and for America in what God continues to write through Hosea, especially as you get into chapter 3 and chapter 4. The equation between where we are and where Judah and Israel were at that time is unquestionable. And more than that, the equation between where the church is in America today and where the priests were in that period of time it's incredible. You can just preach it to America. You can preach it to the churches in America. We're in deep, serious trouble in this nation right now. And it's not because of all the people who don't know Christ. It's because we are not doing what God has called us to do. And in a couple weeks on Sunday night, we're going to talk about that from Hosea chapter 4. And we're going to look very carefully what God has to say to them and what God has to say to us, because you can't escape the conclusion. Next Sunday night, we're going to have a guest speaker. It's going to be, look forward to that. It'll be a really interesting evening. Well, we tend to be less and less as the time goes on by. I think the point I wanted to make there, without really making it the main point of what we were doing, is this. We have been, in this nation, and perhaps in many parts of the Eurocentric world, we have been brainwashed a little bit by Hollywood. Sorry, if that surprises anybody, well, pay attention. But since the 1950s, all of these films about Palestine and about the Exodus and about Christ and his time have been filled with white people. You know what's really hard to find in first century Palestine? A white person. I mean, all the white people there are Romans. Ain't none of them Jews, and ain't none of them from Africa. I think, guys, our little picture we have on the wall at home, you know, you can picture Christ any way you want. It's not a big deal. He doesn't matter to him. But that picture you have on the wall at home that's been around since the 12th century, certainly is not what he looked like. Do I know what he looked like? No. But that's not it. That's not it. We will. Indeed. There's an interesting scripture somewhere in the first 12 chapters of Exodus. I was looking for it right before it came out. I didn't have time to really find it, so I haven't found it. I'll find it for you. That, I can't remember the context either, why it says what it says. But it makes this statement that there was some confusion in Egypt at one point because the Israelites that were slaves looked so much like the Egyptians that it was hard to tell them apart. Isn't that an interesting concept? Of course she does, yeah. Yeah. He is, and I think everybody should think of him in a way that they can identify with very easily. A bunch of Cherokees. You look good. Yes, ma'am. I try not to say anything.
My brain is fresh, reminded. So, again, why did God tell Hosea to marry the prostitute?
Yeah, he did. Hosea's, yeah. Excuse me, I have a heart attack. I'll answer later. Yes, exactly. It was an object lesson. Yes. Hosea's entire life. Okay, here comes the answer now. Yeah, Hosea's entire life was an object lesson to show the relationship between God and Israel and how God loved them and brought them into his breast, but they betrayed him, and he forgave them, brought them back, and they betrayed him again, and he forgave and brought them back, and they betrayed him again. It was this constant circle until finally God said, okay, that's enough. Now the captivity that I promised would come way back when we entered this land is going to come. So basically, his entire life was an object lesson, which is kind of interesting. Maybe our life is an object lesson.
But we still didn't hear why God told him to marry her.
As an object lesson of his love and his forgiveness. In other words, Gomer became, stood in as that object, as a shadow for Israel, while Hosea was the shadow for God's love and God's constant forgiveness. And she did. She did. By the end of the book, she did. Yeah. She did. Yes, ma'am. Okay. If she had surrendered, if she had surrendered to that relationship, just like if Israel had surrendered to that relationship with God and simply done those things he'd asked, then none of the other stuff would have had to happen. Although God knew it would happen, it didn't have to happen. It happened because of the disobedience of the people. Yeah, the entire lesson today? Kind of, sort of. God makes families out of the weirdest things. If you want to know, come visit the asylum. It's down in Winter Park. No, it's not. No, it's not.